Title: Shadows over Pinecrest, a journey into the unknown. The first time Callum Hyde heard the name Pinecrest, he was half drunk and recording audio for a dead-end podcast episode on Midwest ghost towns. The old man had leaned in across the bar, eyes glazed but voice sober. Pinecrest, he'd whispered. Town that ain't on any map. Should have stayed that way. Callum laughed it off at the time. A few weeks later, he found himself staring at a box of grainy photographs mailed anonymously to his apartment in Chicago. No return address, just one line scrawled in ballpoint pen. They still whisper at the edge of the pines. He should have tossed them. Instead, he booked a rental car and headed east. Pinecrest wasn't on GPS. The road signs thinned out after the county line, and the pavement turned to gravel. For a while, Callum thought he'd taken a wrong turn, until he spotted the rusted sign half buried in kudzu. Welcome to Pinecrest, founded 1823. Population approximately, and the number had been scratched out. The road narrowed into a tunnel of trees. Pines so tall and dense they blotted out most of the late afternoon sun. Shadows fell early here. The only sound was gravel crunching under his tires and the occasional flap of wings overhead. His phone had no service. The town appeared without warning, like it had been waiting for him. A row of weathered storefronts, an empty gas station with pumps older than he was, a post office that looked closed but not abandoned. The air felt wrong, heavy, expectant. Callum parked and stepped out, camera in hand. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of his own footsteps as he walked the cracked sidewalk. The Pinecrest General Store had a bell on the door. It rang like a funeral chime when he pushed it open. A woman looked up from behind the counter. Late 60s, stiff white apron, face like a chalk sketch. "We're closed," she said flatly. Callum gave his best "I'm just here to document" smile. "I was hoping to ask a few questions. I'm making a documentary, folk history, urban legends. Your town came up." "We don't have legends." "I think you do," he said, sliding one of the photos from the anonymous envelope onto the counter. It showed a tree, massive, split down the middle, with something faint carved into the bark. A spiral. Behind it, a small shadow, barely visible in the trees. Too dark to make out. The woman went pale. She picked up the photo, tore it in half, and dropped it into the trash can beside her. "You should leave before nightfall," she said. "Road's easier that way." Callum didn't move. "Ma'am, is there something wrong with—" She turned her back. "We don't answer questions. Not anymore." He checked into the only place that resembled an inn. A sagging two-story house with a painted sign that read the Pinecrest Rest. The man at the front desk didn't ask for ID. Just handed him a key with a metal tag that said Room 2 and muttered, "Keep the curtains closed at night." The room smelled like cedar and old soap. One bed, one desk, one window, looking out over the woods. Callum set up his gear and sat down to review the rest of the photos. Each one stranger than the last. A figure standing in a doorway with no face. A group of people in old-fashioned clothes gathered in a circle, heads bowed. Another shot of the tree, this time at night, with dozens of faint lights hanging from its branches. Or maybe not lights, maybe eyes. That night he recorded his first log entry. Audio log. Pinecrest, Day 1. Town is barely functioning. Locals are quiet, guarded. Something happened here, but they won't say what. Found the tree from the photo in the woods just outside town. Spiral symbol appears again. Might return tomorrow, with daylight. Locals warned me to leave before dark, and I get the sense they weren't being polite. He paused the recording. Somewhere outside, a twig snapped, then another. He walked to the window and peered through the blinds. Pine trees stood still under the moonlight, but between two of them, a figure, unmoving, staring straight at him. Callum didn't move. The figure stood halfway between shadow and moonlight. Tall, thin, too still to be casual. No flashlight, no movement. Just watching. Callum shut the blinds slowly and backed away from the window. He grabbed his camera and pressed record, talking low but steady. There's someone outside my room. No light, no noise, just watching. Can't make out the face. Not sure if they're a local, but the blinds fluttered suddenly. Not from wind, from breath, slow and steady, pushing against the glass from the other side. He froze. No footsteps, no knock, just that sound. Measured, human. Then silence. He stayed awake the rest of the night. By morning, the figure was gone. No footprints on the dewy grass, no sign anyone had been there. Callum checked his recording. The audio hissed and warped between 2:17 and 2:23 a.m. Right when he'd seen the shape. Like something had jammed the signal. He packed his gear and headed to the woods. The tree from the photos stood a quarter-mile outside town, off an unmarked path hidden by deadfall. It was impossible to miss once you knew where to look. Thick trunk, split vertically, like an open wound. Black bark peeled in strips. Something about it felt wrong, like it was still breathing. He circled it with his camera, zooming in on the carvings. The spiral was there, but also other marks. Runes, scratchings, symbols that didn't resemble any language he knew. As he filmed, the trees around him shifted. No breeze, just movement. Like the forest was leaning in to listen. A sound drifted between the trunks. Not wind, not birds. Whispers, faint, toneless, not words. Just the feeling of words, like meaning had been scraped out. He turned off the camera and called out, "Hello?" Silence. Then one clear voice behind him. "It's not dead." He spun. Nothing there. Just trees and a faint smell of rot. He left fast. Back at the inn, the desk clerk didn't look surprised to see him shaken. "You saw the tree, didn't you?" the man asked, still not meeting Callum's eyes. "Something's wrong with that place," Callum said. "What is it?" The man took a long breath, then said flatly, "It grows from the center." Callum frowned. "The center of what?" The man looked at him then. Really looked. The center of where something entered this world. Long time ago, before Pinecrest had a name. Callum leaned forward. "You're talking about a portal?" "I'm talking about a wound," the clerk replied. "One the town was built to stitch shut." Callum stared at him. "The spiral. I saw it everywhere. It's a seal. The old families carved it into everything. Wood, stone, even bone. They thought it could keep whatever's underneath from waking." Callum felt a chill creep into his spine. "You believe it's still alive?" "No," the clerk said. "Then why warn me?" He paused. "Because we only think it's sleeping." That night, Callum reviewed the forced audio. At first, just rustling, then faint static, then, buried beneath the white noise, a layered whisper. "Go back, go back, go back." He scrubbed the audio back, played it again, but it had changed. Now it whispered, "Let it in." He shut the laptop. Outside, the hallway creaked. His door handle turned. Slow. He grabbed the camera and edged toward the door. Silence. He opened it. The hallway was empty, except for a photo taped to the doorframe. Old, faded. sepia-toned. It showed a group of townspeople standing at the tree, eyes blacked out. Behind them, a shadow, tall, faceless, stretched too thin. On the back, written in neat cursive, "They built the town around it. Now it wants out." Callum stared at the photograph for a long time. It wasn't just the blacked out eyes or the twisted shadow in the background. It was the setting. He recognized the people's clothes, the shape of the tree, the angle of the clearing. This wasn't 100 years ago, like he first assumed. This photo was recent, maybe 5 years old, 10 at most. He flipped it again. They built the town around it. Now it wants out. He packed up his equipment, slipped the photo into his notebook, and left the inn. The Pinecrest library sat on the far side of town, quiet and weathered, windows fogged with condensation despite the warm day. He didn't expect much, but the librarian surprised him. She was in her early 40s with sharp features and a voice like gravel. Her name tag read M. Travis. "You're the one asking about the tree," she said, not even looking up. Callum hesitated. "Yeah, and about what's under it." She closed the book she was holding and finally met his eyes. "You think you're the first?" "I'm guessing I'm the only one who didn't grow up too scared to ask." She smiled. Not amused, but something colder. "The others didn't grow up. That's the difference." Callum pulled out the photo and slid it across the desk. She didn't flinch, just nodded. "That's from The Calling." "What's that?" "A reckoning," she said. "It happens every few decades. We don't mark it with calendars. We mark it with missing persons." She stood, walked to the back shelf, and pulled out a thin leather-bound book. It looked handmade. She opened it to a page of names, neatly handwritten. Each one was followed by a year: 1990, 1962, 1934, 1901, and so on. Callum ran his finger down the list. "These are those who disappeared," she said. "Some went into the woods, some just vanished in their beds. Every calling takes more. Why?" She paused, then whispered, "To feed the thing we buried." Callum left the library shaken. The sun was beginning to set, stretching long shadows across the sidewalks. The town seemed quieter than usual. Doors shut tighter, curtains drawn. No kids, no pets, just the sound of insects buzzing in the dying light. He passed the diner, the general store, the post office. All closed early. Everyone was waiting or hiding. That night, Callum returned to the tree. He didn't care if it was reckless. He needed footage, proof, closure. The forest swallowed the light fast. He brought headlamps and backup batteries, setting his camera on a tripod, aimed at the spiral tree. He checked the audio feed. Live. He started recording. For the first 20 minutes, nothing. Stillness. A breeze. A raccoon passed through the frame. Then the ground shivered. Not an earthquake, not a tremor. Something moving underneath. He focused the camera. A low groaning sound vibrated through the dirt, like wood bending under massive weight. Then the bark of the tree split slightly, like something inside was pressing out. A shadow passed across the clearing, but there were no clouds, no birds, no reason. Then, the whispering again, this time louder, rhythmic, surrounding him. "Let it in, let it out, let it feed, let it out." Callum backed away, breath catching. He grabbed his camera, yanked it from the tripod. The tree breathed, its hollow opening expanding like a lung, warm air spilling from the split bark, carrying the stench of decay and damp earth. Something was inside, something waking. And then he heard the scream, not from the forest, from inside the tree. A child's voice, calling for help. Callum froze. The scream echoed from inside the tree, muffled and raw, like someone buried alive. He moved closer, camera forgotten in his hand. The spiral-carved bark pulsed, the split widening slightly as if the tree were exhaling again. The stench grew stronger, sour, organic, like rotting leaves and wet fur. "Hello?" he called out. The scream came again, sharper this time, human, definitely a child. Without thinking, he shoved his hand into the split. His fingers touched something wet, something that moved. He recoiled, stumbling backward. The tree screamed. No, not the tree. Something inside it. The sound cut through the forest like a razor. Birds exploded from the trees above, fleeing toward the horizon. The air vibrated with pressure, and Callum dropped to his knees, clutching his head. The whispering returned. Layered, chaotic, many voices speaking at once. "Let it in. Let it feed. You brought it back. You brought it back." He ran. Back at the inn, Callum slammed the door shut behind him, chest heaving. He pulled the camera footage onto his laptop, hands shaking. He skipped to the moment he touched the tree. The audio warped, not static, not interference, but something deeper, almost digital and organic at once. Like the camera was trying to scream. On screen, the tree moved, imperceptibly at first, then clearly, breathing, splitting, something glossy and black, pressing against the inside like a fist behind wet cloth. Then the screen glitched. A frame, only one. But it stopped him cold. A face, not human. A stretched white oval with holes for eyes, and a spiral where the mouth should have been. When he tried to replay it, the file crashed. At 2:09 a.m., someone knocked on his door. 3 slow knocks. Callum grabbed his pocket knife, pressed his ear to the door. Silence. Then a voice, calm, familiar. "Open up, Callum." He opened the door. It was M. Travis, the librarian. But her face looked different. Pale, slick with sweat. Her pupils wide and dilated like she hadn't slept in days. "You saw it," she said. Not a question. Callum nodded. "They know," she whispered. "You disturbed the seal. The moment you touched it, they knew." "Who's they?" She looked behind her down the hallway. Not ghosts, not demons. Something else. Something older. The founders didn't worship it. They feared it. They built this town like a lid over a coffin. "And now it's waking up," Callum said. "No," she said. "Now it's reaching out." She led him out into the woods, past the tree, deeper. They reached a ridge that sloped into a hollow, a bowl-shaped depression that Callum hadn't seen on any map. At the center sat stone ruins, a circle of worn monoliths marked with spirals and crosses. Burnt candles, bones scattered, small ones. "A containment circle," Travis whispered. "It's cracking, the ground's shifting, the thing inside. It doesn't want Pinecrest anymore. It wants out." Callum's voice was barely audible. "Out? Where?" "Everywhere." As the wind picked up, Callum spotted something at the edge of the stones. A person. No. Multiple. Thin figures emerging from the trees, slowly, silently. Their eyes blacked out, their mouths open. Each whispering in perfect unison. "You brought it back. You broke the seal." Callum and Travis backed away. "You need to leave," she said. "Tonight, burn your footage. Forget this town." "I can't." She grabbed his arm. "Then you'll never leave." "Not really." Callum looked back at the tree line. More figures were coming, whispers thick as fog. And from beneath the ground, he could feel it. The thing that slept beneath Pinecrest. Waking up, they ran, through trees that bent unnaturally, over roots that shifted beneath their feet. The forest had changed, stretched deeper than it was hours ago. Pinecrest no longer felt like a town surrounded by woods. Now it felt like something hidden inside the woods, like the town was the illusion. Callum's lungs burnt by the time they reached the back road leading toward the inn. Travis stumbled behind him, clutching a side stitch, but didn't stop. Behind them, the whispering never faded. Not voices now, just pressure. A sound that lived in the back of the skull between thought and instinct. You opened it. Back in his room, Callum grabbed his tapes, hard drives, audio gear, all of it. He was done chasing answers. Travis was right. This wasn't a story. It was a warning. One too late. He threw everything into his duffel and turned to the window to gauge the fastest route to his car. He stopped. There, in the middle of the street, stood every Pinecrest resident he'd seen since arriving. The general store woman, the diner cook, the innkeeper, the old man from the bar, all of them, standing motionless, staring up at his window, mouths open, whispers rising. He turned to Travis. "How do we get out?" She stared at the window like she was trying to will the scene away. "We don't. We have to. They won't let you leave with anything. Not footage, not memories, not even yourself." "What does that mean?" She looked at him, and for the first time, her voice cracked. "It means whatever crawled out of that tree knows you. It's in you now." Callum backed away. No, I'm not." He stopped. His nose was bleeding. They made it to the car just before dawn, cutting across a narrow utility path that bypassed the main road. No headlights. Just cold sweat and the growing sense that something was pacing them on both sides. The car started. The gravel sprayed. The town disappeared behind them. But the whispers didn't. They drove for nearly an hour before they saw another road sign. Deerbrook. 5 miles to town. Civilization, Callum breathed. Travis didn't. She was staring at her hands. They were shaking. She whispered, "Do you hear it?" Callum turned down the radio. Silence. Then, faintly, from the trunk of the car, a soft, rhythmic thump. Something inside. They pulled over, opened the trunk. Nothing, except his camera, which he hadn't packed. The screen was on, playing footage he'd never recorded. The spiral tree, at night, dozens of figures standing in a circle around it, and in the middle, him, Callum, eyes blacked out, mouth whispering. Travis slammed the trunk shut. "Burn it," she said, "right now." But Callum didn't move. He was staring at the screen. His mouth parted slightly, as if listening. Then he said it, softly, not his voice. "Let it in." They drove in silence after that. Travis kept her eyes on the road. Callum stared ahead, face pale, jaw tight, hands trembling slightly in his lap. He hadn't spoken since the words slipped from his mouth in that cold, borrowed voice. Let it in. The farther they got from Pinecrest, the clearer the sky became. As if the town pulled its darkness close like a curtain. The sun rose, but it didn't warm anything. There was a numbness now, a thin film over reality that refused to wash away. At the edge of Deerbrook, they pulled into a gas station. Normal life buzzed again. People filling their tanks, a teen wiping windows, music playing from inside the mini-mart. It all looked fine, but it felt wrong. Too bright, too unaware. Travis leaned in close to Callum as they sat parked. "We have one choice," she said. "Burn everything. Camera drives, notes, everything. You forget this place. You don't speak of it. You don't even think about it." Callum nodded slowly, but he didn't look at her. He was still listening. They checked into a roadside motel and spent an hour laying out every piece of evidence: the camera, hard drives, tapes, photos, the notebook. Travis doused them with lighter fluid. Callum lit the match. The flame caught quickly, curling the edges of truth into ash. Symbols melted, faces twisted and vanished. The whispering finally stopped. At least for her, but not for Callum. That night, Travis awoke to find him gone. The bathroom light was on, door cracked, empty. The front door of the motel hung open, swaying slightly in the wind. She found him 2 miles down the road, standing barefoot in a field at the tree line, his shirt soaked in sweat, eyes distant. He was whispering again. This time the spiral was scratched into the dirt at his feet. She grabbed his arm, shook him hard. "You burned it. It's over." He turned to her slowly, and something in his face was no longer his. The voice that came out was 100 voices all at once. "You brought me out. I don't need Pinecrest anymore." Epilogue. 3 months later, a string of disappearances was reported along rural towns from Pennsylvania to Ohio. No bodies, just spirals drawn in ash, always one person at a time. In the final entry of her journal, found near a burned-out cabin in Kentucky, Travis wrote, "It moved through him, through the camera, through the recordings. It's not bound to the roots anymore. It spreads through memory, through witnesses. It doesn't want to be forgotten. It wants to be seen. So, if someone ever tells you about a place called Pinecrest, or shows you an old photo of a tree with a spiral, or plays a tape that sounds like whispering, don't listen, don't look, don't let it in." Thanks for watching Haunted Chronicles. If you heard the whispers, don't ignore them. Subscribe for more true-feeling tales of terror. And remember, the most dangerous places aren't haunted by ghosts. They're haunted by the truths we bury. New horrors every day. Like, share, and stay close to the light. You never know what's watching when the night falls.